King of the Hill was a great show. But once upon a time, while lazily shopping at a thrift store, I began to notice something wrong with the series. I think everybody knows what King of the Hill is, the 1997 to 2010 series that served as sort of a Southern Fried Simpsons to people who didn't pay too close attention, but it actually had its own personality, far unlike any other animated sitcom to date, taking realistic situations and just making them really, really funny. And, oh man. You can still find the program on Adult Swim, Cartoon Network during the nights, in case you haven't watched Adult Swim before. But anyway, I was shopping the thrift store with one hand in my pocket, and the other one giving a peace sign to my hippie buddy Bob, who served the store counter, while looking for some 99-cent NES games to add to my ever-growing retro video game collection. Ah. I didn't find anything out of the ordinary, mostly a bunch of copies of Gyromite and third-rate football titles, so I strutted my stuff to the VHS section in the rear end of the store, as I'm not the kind of guy to care too much about picture quality, and videotapes are cheap to buy. Time is money, we're all short on time, it's a short life. You know what I'm saying. Yeah. After passing a few covers that didn't really catch my eye, I glimpsed a VHS 2-pack sporting George Jetson's face on its cover. Now, I wasn't a really big fan of the Jetsons, but at the price of 27 cents for one tape and 42 cents for two, I was about ready to say no. Besides, I knew that my girlfriend was into Hanna-Barbera cartoons, and it's my mission as a man to keep my baby angel smiling. So, I snatched up the 2-pack, Tupac, only for some postcard-sized slip of paper to fall out between the two tapes. I just assumed it was an advertisement for other Hanna-Barbera animated classics, but instead, I'm kind of embarrassed saying it, but there was a picture of cartoon testicles. Really hairy, dangling ones, kind of obnoxious-like. Impossible for the eye to miss. 250 Front Street West, Toronto, Ontario, M5V3G5. It's set in Comic Sans font, bold centered so that the animated genitals would be impossible to miss. Well, I bought it anyway, figuring it was just a prank that Bob's coworker Nicholas was playing on whatever unknown customer would end up picking up his VHS tape collection here. I even kept the slip that fell out, thinking my girlie and I could have a nice laugh at it. Cartoon balls. Well, when I arrived home, I realized that my honey was out. "Sorry, baby. It's a girls' night out thing. Put some delicious Campbell's soup in the fridge for you, sweetie," the kitchen counter note read. Well, whatever. I don't care. I might just be an ordinary average Joe guy, but I could heat up my own soup. I decided to save the grub for later, as I wasn't particularly hungry. I was too excited from my purchase at the thrift store. So what did I do? I went to work uncoiling my VCR's coax cables, which I used to goofily refer to as coax cables when I was a kid and didn't know any better. And it was VCR's all set up time, baby. Once everything was ready to go, I popped in the first tape, which was labeled TJKOTH S1E1NR. Now, wait a minute. Cough? What, you mean like King of the Hill? I thought that to myself as the tape started playing. Static cleared up after a couple seconds, and some creepy pirate show played briefly. Whatever. And then the real episode began. As you may have expected, this wasn't the Jetsons at all. The King of the Hill intro played, except for instead of that gritty southern guitar rock riffage song, an 80s style hip hop beat played to some lyrics about tacos and some other southern style foods like enchiladas, and the Mountain Dew logo flashed in the corner, bright as the sun or something at first, but then it went back down to normal. I figured that maybe this tape was some sort of extra that Taco Bell restaurants sold in the 90s, perhaps as the result of some sort of advertising deal with the creator of King of the Hill, Mike Judge. Well, after that little rumination, a skeleton wearing a top hat and a monocle randomly popped up onto the screen, briefly replacing the circle with Hank in it. Oh, it scared the shit out of me. But then I laughed at myself, actually. I just shrugged it off. Yeah, nice try, Taco Bell. That skeleton's totally going to get me to buy fast food tacos. I just figured it was a bunch of bullshit. Skeleton? Come on. It's Halloween, 6th grade. Anyway, the camera panned over the downtown of the Hill family city of Arlen. Everything was in black and white, with maybe half a second of distorted static sound coming in and out every couple seconds. I guess that was when I realized I was watching some ghetto quality version of the original King of the Hill episode or something like that. Bobby was playing baseball with his father, yapping at him as he failed as usual. I half smiled to myself, having already seen this episode a couple times before, other than it not having that strange opening sequence. Whatever. I pulled a peanut butter and jelly sandwich out of my fanny pack and just felt really happy to have something to watch and eat. TV and a snack, plus soup in the fridge. I knew I could take care of myself before Judy came home. Now, of course, what I was watching wasn't the actual pilot episode of King of the Hill. For example, on the car ride back to the Hill residence, Hank mumbled to himself something about being really frustrated that nobody got the mail today, and how getting it at the time it's delivered is the happiest moment of his daily life, outside of selling propane. Well, okay then, Mr. Hill. It's kind of weird, but whatever. Then he took out a cigarette, perhaps to relieve the stress and get his mind off of the mail thing and the baseball game. I tell you what, nothing's better than a smooth faggot when life's really got you down, Hank said. Now, I felt a little offended by the use of the word faggot, but since Hank was talking about a cigarette, I shrugged it off and took another bite out of my sandwich. Dad, I don't appreciate you calling me a faggot, Bobby mumbled to himself, sounding kind of like former President George W. Bush. Hank swiftly put his hand into the air as if he was threatening to backhand Bobby, but Peggy stared at Hank with fully bloodshot eyes. After that, there was 2, maybe 3 minutes of pure silence, and Hank continued driving the car despite his head being turned to face Bobby the entire time. He had a look on his face that reminded me of the American Gothic painting with the farmer and all that, looking kind of pissed off. I wondered how he could do all that without snapping his neck and crashing into something. It made me think of that little girl from The Exorcist. I just kind of stopped and thought to myself, is this just like a YouTube poop that someone threw onto a VHS tape? Well, after the Hills walked into the house, Hank goes back to yelling at Bobby. If I told you once, I've told you 576 times, he started, sounding a little bit more vicious than usual. Always give the 110%. Hank picked up a baseball, and his eyes briefly disappeared and reappeared somehow, like the animators forgot to put them in or something. Hank sighed to himself. They took my eyes, Bobby. They took my eyes. Hank sat down at the table and, in a rare showing of emotion, sobbed to himself while Peggy held onto his shoulder. The bit of bread and peanut-flavored butter that was in my mouth, I stopped chewing. I mean, I wasn't afraid or anything. This was probably some junior high school film project gone wrong or something some kid thought was funny, but I felt uncomfortable with the sudden display of emotion and use of non sequiturs in King of the Hill. I mean, it wasn't like Hank to freak out over something as little as a baseball game. Well, kind of was, but not to this extent. That's when I found out that there was much more to what led to his emotional state. Much more than that. Hank stopped. He wiped his eyes and his nose on his sleeve. Peggy, the Yeti came back. He then suddenly got up and stormed out of the room, heading straight to bed. A Yeti? There was, I don't know, it was like a European art show or something. The video swirling around kind of crazy in a light brown and blue tinge as Hank's eyes disappeared again, reappeared bloodshot. He slowly shut them and went back to sleep, all while the camera was zoomed in so close to his face that you could witness a vein seemingly start to snap. The screen went to black, and that's when I spit out my food. The words that displayed freaked me out. We're all on a bus, spiraling straight into the sun. What will you do when you run out of food? Won't you come along for this final fateful ride? Please don't hurt yourself. Just go to sleep. I hit the stop button and I screamed. I laughed like a maniac. I screamed some more. I stepped all over the half-chewed bits and pieces of sandwich. I unfastened my fanny pack and I ran downstairs. Damn it, man. I had an anxiety disorder to begin with, so this was just too much. I exhaled loudly. This is all in your head, Tim. Your head's not on straight. Only you can fix it. If there is a fix for this, only you can solve. Remember what your therapist said. I said all that to reassure myself, and it worked well enough. I huffed, I puffed, I inhaled, I exhaled. I laughed at how silly I was for responding this way to somebody's crude prank videotape. I went back upstairs. I realized that the only way to behave, healthfully or whatever, was to watch the rest of this tape and overcome my ridiculous anxieties. I had to realize they were all ill-founded, And I could enjoy life for what it's truly worth. I put the tape back on. The eerie text faded and King of the Hill zoomed back in. The animation, coloring, and so on looked like a typical King of the Hill episode. It was the Hill residence, their living room, it seemed. Peggy went in to sit down on the sofa. Some show was on about a cartoon manatee who loved shoes or some shit. I didn't really care at this point. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Peggy got up and answered. A person dressed in white doctor's clothes appeared. Now, you might expect Peggy to finally say something at this point, given it was her house, too, but nothing. Ah, Mrs. Hill. Dr. Rinaldo is here to assist you, as always. I recall you speaking to me on the phone about Mr. Hill's Yeti problem. Suddenly, the scene from the real pilot of King of the Hill, with Hank telling off the social worker and all, played in a dreamlike flashback kind of way, all in black and white, with a hazy texture layered on top of the video. Will it happen again? Or will he learn? Is he the bus? Or is he the sun? That text again, this time layered on top of the show itself, the same voice as Ronaldo. There's a picture of a secret decoder ring in the bottom left corner. The audio was the King of the Hill theme song in a slow, sad, somber musical key and slightly lower volume now. I felt like gulping. I thought I was over this. The bedroom door opened. Hank walked out without glasses on. He came so close to Dr. Ronaldo that he could probably feel his breath on him if he was an actual person. Are you here to stop those terrible dreams? Hank said to Ronaldo in a low, muffled tone, again not sounding much like himself. Yes, Peter. You knew fully well what you were doing when you jumped through the portal. Okay, that was it. I had enough of this stupid, phony, college prankish bootleg episode of King of the Hill. Peter? What is this, Family Guy? His name was Hank. Hank Hill. Dr. Ronaldo? There was no Dr. Ronaldo in King of the Hill. Use of the word faggot? That's nothing they do on the show. All the crazy colors and audio? The pirate show footage? I'm sorry, but that was it. Enough was enough. I didn't bother to hit stop this time. I ripped the VHS tape out of the player. I opened a kitchen drawer and found a matchbook. I ripped a match out and was prepared to strike. Forget the tape, the VHS player, Bob, Nicholas, the thrift store, whoever. I was going to burn down the house and take myself down with it. Let's face it, I spent my entire life wishing I was dead. My girlfriend isn't a real person. I don't know where I even just ran down to, seeing as how I live in an apartment. There's no real downstairs here. Yes, I'm crazy. I was crazy from the start. From my birth, I'm raving mad like a lunatic. You know those old Woody Woodpecker cartoons? Well, fuck Look, Woody, call me screwy. I'm a screwball. I was born this way. It's nobody's fault. Or maybe it's mine, or maybe it's yours. But nothing I've told you has any real meaning or purpose. The bus, the sun, George Jetson. My name isn't Tim, I can tell you that. I continued viewing the VHS tape. Dr. Rinaldo was rubbing Hank's back as his face continued to get redder and redder. And his other hand was someplace else. Well, I don't know what was going on, but things stopped, and Hank grabbed Rinaldo's hand and shoved it away. And you know how Hank Hill's always threatening to kick people's asses? Like, punched Rinaldo square in the balls. You'd think Rinaldo would be the one reacting violently at this point. But it was Hank who grasped Rinaldo by the neck and howled out, "You're going to get more of them twig boys over here to put me in prison and take my boy away?" The scene just cut to Hank dragging Dr. Rinaldo by the back of the neck down the hallway into the backyard. Hank took a propane tank off of the grill and shoved the valve into Rinaldo's mouth. The video then went silent for a second, simply showing the propane valve in Rinaldo's mouth. When the scene started moving again, Rinaldo's eyes slowly closed. The voice was heard. "Buck Strickland, forgive me for using propane for this. The only problem is, whoever it was didn't sound like Mike Judge." The screen went black after this. I fast-forwarded through the rest of the tape to make sure there was no more content on it. There was none. I just thought to myself, why so much wasted space? And at this point, as you can imagine, I was really shaken up. I went to grab a coffee, and I took the soup out of the fridge and popped it into the microwave. When I got back, I put on the second tape. It was just more static, more pirates, and then a black screen. I fast-forwarded to check for content, and eventually came across some stuff that was really starting to scare me. It was a funeral, but there were very few colors. It was black and white all over again. Various forms of gray and black. And the colors of people's faces, I guess, but it didn't seem like a real Koth episode. The funeral was for Rinaldo. Attending it was all of the Hill's neighbors, including some friends like Bill and Dale. Even Hank was there, claiming that Dr. Rinaldo had committed suicide. As Dr. Rinaldo's coffin was lowered into the hole, faded into an overhead view of it being lowered. This part really scared the shit out of me. It was a semi-hyper-realistic image of Dr. Rinaldo in the coffin. The reason I say semi is because it looked real, but still appeared to be drawn and not a real person. It was just a realistic cartoon. A realistic cartoon who looked like Carlton from Fresh Prince. The scene then cut to Bobby, Hank, and Lady Bird sitting on a porch. Bobby had a queasy face, and Hank had one hand on the propane tank that he used to commit the murder. Bobby turned to his father. Why did you do it, Dad?" "I don't know, son," Hank responded, and almost sounded like he was crying. He stood up. He walked inside, leaving Bobby and Lady Bird, who were still on the porch. It once again cut to a very dull scene with nothing but black, gray, and skin colors. It was a scene that literally made me sick to my stomach. It was Hank hanging from the ceiling with a note pinned on him. It just stayed focused on him swinging back and forth for 2 minutes or so. Then they showed the note. It said, "If you have your secret Dakota ring, solve this puzzle. Solve this puzzle, and you'll know the answers to all of the lost episodes. Your pal, George Jetson." It then cut to the ending credits with the normal outro and theme music. I was actually kind of laughing now. I mean, George Jetson's not a real person. None of this made any sense. The show was playing the regular ending credits. That's funny, after all that stuff happened. Oh, I was more confused than creeped out. I went on some forums, but I found nothing about this episode. I came across someone on Yahoo Answers who had a similar occurrence as mine. They received a similar tape at a thrift shop in Burlington County in southern New Jersey, a place about 20 miles away from where I got mine. I managed to get on AIM with this person, but I got no answers. He just told me that if I don't find the secret decoder ring, I'll never know the answers. I was really curious at this point. The ring? Does this come with the VHS tape when you bought it at Taco Bell? You might think I'm crazy, and you're right, but I drove over 800 miles. I went right to the Cartoon Network Turner Broadcasting HQ because I wasn't comfortable making the trip to Canada. I knew that Fox Broadcasting made the real show, but I assumed Cartoon Network had made every episode on record. Stupid mistake. Cartoon Network didn't make King of the Hill. They just aired them all. Beforehand, I did some research and figured out who was in charge of broadcasting Goth, so I found a receptionist in the studio and demanded to talk to him. Apparently, though, I needed a guest pass of some sort. I was completely fucking frustrated at this point, so I drove all the way back home. I put on my old movie theater rusher's uniform. I mean, I was a movie theater rusher in Burlington County about 3 years ago. I thought maybe it made me look like an authority figure. I went back, and although it was against the law, I used my ID. I flashed it to him, and I said, I am of the law. I got into his office. He was just sitting at his desk talking on his phone. I walked up to him, threw the tapes on his desk, and I demanded answers. I said, if you have to give me a ring, put down your phone. You give me a ring. He dropped the phone immediately. I didn't get a ring. He grabbed the tapes. I followed him to another office on the other side of the building. There was a small safe in this office. He opened it up, put the tapes in, and locked it. He then told me to leave. But I refused to go. I needed answers. I had to know, what was this all about? He did the Macarena. He did all sorts of dances. He told me never stop dancing, never stop watching. He told me to find all the lost episodes. He told me King of the Hill, Seinfeld, Frasier, Smurfs, Friends, Droopy Dog, Home Improvement, that these videos were out there. He told me to get in touch with George fucking Jetson. Now, I know that George Jetson's not a real person. And I know I'm not a movie theater usher. And I know that I have nothing to do with the law. So I drove back home disappointed. Adult Swim was on, and I was relieved to see a real episode of King of the Hill. To this day, there are only 2 copies of this episode on 4 tapes. I can't find anything else on the internet, but I figure if it's out there, it has to be on the internet. One of them I still assume is locked up in Cartoon Network studios, and to this very day, I just keep asking myself, why didn't I make the trip to Canada? And then a skeleton popped out of my closet.